Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. Took a break from the garden today to bring you guys the daily updates. We're in the survival gear part of the warehouse today. We got a 16,000 square foot warehouse that we continue to build out because I just love survival gear, man. In fact, today's topic is all about gasoline because apparently a new record has been set in the United States at $9.60 per gallon. Okay, we are almost at $10 a gallon. There's a economic analyst who's predicting $15 to $20 per gallon. Okay, these are scary, scary numbers. Now, we're going to talk about that in just a minute, but on the topic of fuel, because I like showing you guys cool stuff. Some of you might have seen these before. These are the Scepter military gas canisters. These are standard issue in US, Canadian military, in NATO as well. These things are built virtually indestructible, extremely lightweight, a much thicker plastic. I can't remember the exact name of the plastic, but it's not your run-of-the-mill plastic. It's not the same stuff that the other jerry cans are made out of. This stuff is virtually bomb-proof. They even say that they won't explode, that they'll just melt. However, I've had some people say that that's not necessarily true. You can also get the water canisters, and you can get them in either a 10 liter like this, or you can get the, see, we got the 10 liter here for these as well, or you can get, of course, the 20 liter. Now, this is a, buy once, cry once type thing, but the great thing about these is that the price of these has stayed the same since 2010, and the price of your money hasn't. So basically, this is one thing that's actually going down in price continuously. I think these range from between 60 to 100 bucks USD, depending on where you get them. They got the 3-handle system there, so you can actually hold 2 with one hand very easily. Yellow is diesel, red is gasoline, and they have their own nozzle system, which will be compatible. The 1-inch will be compatible with most fuel tanks. All right, and of course you combine that with your fuel stabilizers and you're good to go. The reason why you might want to consider stocking gasoline is a lot of economists are saying that the price of gasoline is going to continue to go up. So if you knew that you could invest $1,000 in something now and it would be $1,200 or worth $1,200 in a couple months, then why wouldn't you do that? Even if it's just a small amount, you might save yourself a little bit of money because they're expecting that this increasing price of gas is going to create what they call demand destruction. Now, that happens when the price gets so high that people simply stop driving, or they start taking public transit, or they start riding e-bikes or just bicycles in general, or they downsize to a different type of vehicle. They call that demand destruction. They're saying that demand destruction is going to happen around $6.50 average per gallon. However, I think they don't understand how insatiable Americans have become, and when I say Americans, I mean Westerners, Canadians, North Americans, how insatiable we've become and how willing we might be to actually, put ourselves into debt to drive our vehicles. I mean, we put ourselves into debt for things that are far more frivolous than gasoline and fuel. So I think that it's likely going to go much, much higher, but there's a place in Mendocino, California, that had the most expensive gas in the United States at a whopping $9.60 per gallon. $9.60 per gallon. That is absolutely insane. It's not even nearly that expensive where I live, and typically Canadian gas prices are far higher than American gas prices, okay? That's more than $3 per gallon above the state's average. Now, the average in California is already $6.50. There's economists forecasting that that $6.50 could be an across-the-board average, meaning that this price in Mendocino is likely going to go up. Judy Schaefer, the owner of Schaefer's Auto Body and Repair in Mendocino, said her last load of 9,000 gallons of gas cost nearly $50,000 when it was $30,000 3 months ago. Schaefer said that if she didn't charge $9.60 per gallon, she would be out of business. So it's not about price gouging, according to Judy. Now, Peter Schiff's prediction that it's going to be $15 to $20 per gallon. Some of you know Peter Schiff. There's a lot of jokes about Peter Schiff, like he predicts the apocalypse basically once a week. He predicts that, the American dollar is going to collapse and that the price of gold is going to go to $10,000. He's a big gold bug, has been promoting gold for a long period of time. However, when you look at the track record of a lot of the major indexes over the last 2 years, and cryptocurrency, which has now crashed through that critical support level of $30,000. Some people are saying Ethereum's going downtown, Charlie Brown. Some people are saying Bitcoin is going back down to $20,000. If that happens, there's going to be a whole bunch of blood in the streets. Basically, what he's been promoting, gold, has been one of the best performing assets, out of most things for an extended period of time. If you go back to like the year 2000, the price of gold is, I can't remember the exact amount, but I think it's 500-600% that it's gone up. So it's rather significant. Now, gold, silver, you can't go wrong. I'm leaning towards gold. We're going to be sharing a new gold product with you guys soon, and you can be the judge as to whether or not that's something you want to invest in. But he thinks that we're nowhere near what he calls peak inflation, that these inflationary numbers are going to continue to roll in, and that real inflation, according to him, is around 20%. Okay, that's how they used to calculate the CPI and inflation. Back in the day, they calculate it differently. Today, I don't know all the ins and outs about that, but this is also before shrinkflation. So if we take him on his word, and he says that, the price of things are actually 20% more expensive than they are, which I actually think is an understatement in many cases, because I don't think when they're calculating the CPI that they're weighting things evenly. I mean, if 90% of the things that you purchase have increased 50 to 100%, yet the other 10% is only, of maybe constitutes 90% of things you can buy, but you're only spending 10% of your income on that, then they have to be equally weighted. And I'm not sure if economists actually do that or not, in terms of, people spending the majority of their money on fixed expenses, things you need every month, okay? Gasoline, food, rent, that are all skyrocketing. Now, like I say, it doesn't factor in shrinkflation, or what I call delayflation. Maybe there's another term for this, but it's just the factor of having to wait several months to get something because of all the supply chain hiccups. It's an inconvenience. It's not like you're losing money per se, but that delay, there's value in not having that delay is what I'm saying. So you're also getting that. Now, in terms of gasoline prices in Western Canada, you can see the chart there. Now, according to economists, they're saying that the actual price of gas, when controlled for inflation, that we, even though numerically we've hit a record in the United States and Canada in some places, that it's still actually, like in 2009, if you correct for inflation, the average price of gasoline was actually higher than it is now when you correct for inflation. So, we still have a long way to go before we're truly in gasoline record territory, as crazy as that sounds. Now, have wages gone up proportionally in that time? I highly doubt it. And I can tell you that in Canada, the price of gasoline has nearly doubled, okay, in the span of a year in the place where I live. So things are not looking good. And more bad news for Canadians. Get this, guys. Mortgages taken out in 2020 to 2021 will increase between 30 to 45% by 2025. That means that a median monthly payment of $1,390 now will be paying $1,800 in 2025. Now, that sounds crazy. So long as wages keep up with inflation, then, there's no big deal, right? Because, of course, $1,800 in 2025, what they're basically saying is that's how much your money is going to be worth. If you leave $1,800 in the bank and the interest rates don't keep up, which, of course, they're well behind, there's no sense in putting your money in a savings account right now, but I'm not an economist, don't listen to me, that's what it's going to be worth, essentially, in 2025. Isn't that crazy? It's going to be worth like $400 less, 25% less because of these like 6 to 10% inflation numbers, okay? And what's more is that a lot of Canadian staple items and And, commodities, the prices have nearly doubled in a lot of cases. Never mind this 10%, 20%. We're talking 100%. They reference here canola oil typically was around $3.99 in the past. Now it's like $6.49, okay, in a lot of places. And they say the only good news from the Bank of Canada is this mortgage renewal shock for many is still several years away. Oh, isn't that great? That's just great. Anyways, not looking good. Now, to make matters worse, this supply chain thing keeps getting worse because the COVID lockdowns are continuing to roll out in China. Now, what's happened is that almost 2% of global cargo capacity is currently stuck in the North Sea off the ports of Germany. So there's a major shipping jam, okay? And this is off the ports of Germany, Holland, and Belgium. According to the IFW, the affected ships can neither be loaded nor unloaded. Freight and container ships have also been jammed for weeks off the port of Shanghai and the neighboring province of Zhejiang. The reason, of course, is the traffic jam was the stringent lockdown imposed on the city by the Chinese government. And the bad news is that the lockdown has returned to Shanghai. Yes, you heard it here first. Shanghai will briefly lock down most of the city for the weekend for mass testing as COVID-19 cases continue to emerge, causing more disruption, and it triggered a renewed run on groceries and panic buying after exiting a grueling 2-month shutdown. Now, apparently there's only 11 cases that were discovered, but we know how quickly this thing spreads, and, we know that it's likely everywhere. If 11 people have it, that means you're probably only getting the tip of the iceberg. There's probably hundreds of people that have it. More than 4,400 people who were in close contact with those who were infected have been sent to government-mandated quarantine facilities. Coming soon to a country near you if Justin Trudeau has his way. Now, Tesla, in an attempt to have one last Hail Mary, one last blast from the 2020 stock buying frenzy, they decided to do another 3-for-1 stock split, or they've applied to do a 3-for-1 stock split. So when a company wants to generate more buzz around their stock and attract more investors, it doesn't change anything about the stock in itself. It just basically says, instead of having 500 shares in our company, we're going to break it into 1,500 shares. And if you owned 1 share before, you now own 3 shares. People see the value of the share price come down, and the idea is that it's going to entice more retail investors who are easily swayed by these sort of psychological tricks. Now, they should have learned a lesson from Amazon, because Amazon just did this. They just had a 10-for-1 stock split. Didn't really do much for the stock. Now, if Amazon would have done that in 2020, that stock would have gone parabolic. But Jeff Bezos, not always the smartest guy, more ego. So he wanted his stock to be like the highest stock per share, or among the highest. But it's just a psychological thing. And they basically say outright, saying that it would provide more flexibility for its employees managing their equity and serve as a recruiting tool. Okay, I think Tesla is going to be struggling for the foreseeable future with all the lockdowns and all the rest. I think all companies are going to be struggling. They're predicting there's a very, very high likelihood of a recession within the next 18 months. And that's what we would call a paper recession. In reality, it's already a recession. I mean, yes, the economy might not be technically contracting yet, but at least not on paper, but in reality, it definitely is. Now, somebody sent me this image. Apparently, this is in New York City. It says it's a billboard or a sign on a bus stop. It says, "Ghosts don't plan ahead, but you can. Make an emergency plan, ready.gov plan." Now, I've been seeing this a lot around the world, and it makes me wonder, does the government know something that we don't? Have they realized that, hey, we are way too incompetent and incapable of helping the entire population in times of need, and we need to encourage these people to prepare? I mean, we know that the Department of Homeland Security has been trying to encourage people to prep with gimmicky things like prepare for a zombie apocalypse campaign and things like that have happened in years gone by. But it seems to have ramped up a lot in many other countries. And I'm even seeing a lot of commercials in Canada. Okay, and makes me wonder, like, me with the domain CanadianPreparedness.com and having the store name, and our corporation is called Canadian Emergency Preparedness Inc. I've seen government websites come up in our search. They're ranking pretty high. It almost makes me wonder, when I'm going to get a call from Trudeau saying that he needs some Mountain House and Peak refuel, and unfortunately I'm going to say, hey buddy, sold out. Okay, so what else do we got here? Russia's U.S. ambassador moving to the war issue. The war issue is a big issue, and it's only going to get worse, okay? Russia's U.S. ambassador, Antonov, says Russia-U.S. relations reach a critical point. He said basically their bilateral dialogue is in the bedrock, okay? The worst it has ever been. Russia and the United States relations, which have been in a deep crisis over the past few years, have come to a critical point, Antonov said during a reception at the Russian diplomatic mission in the United States. And there is a hella ton of nuclear war saber-rattling and rhetoric being thrown around right now within Russian state-sponsored media. There's 15 different instances of this in the last 48 hours alone. That's why I'm not even going to talk about it today, because I think we've beat that horse dead, black and blue. And all you need to know is that, yeah, we are continually, as we continue to go down this path, every day that passes, we are at a higher risk of nuclear Armageddon than we were the day before. And that is not an overstatement. Now, Ukrainian forces claim that they are out of ammo as the battle rages on with Russian troops. They're now saying, this is what they're saying. You need to understand there's always strategy, there's always propaganda, but they're never going to say anything which is going to make the situation worse for them. So that's why I don't really believe this entirely. Russia's army is more powerful. They have a lot of artillery and ammo. For now, this is a war of artillery and we are out of ammo. They're saying that they outnumber us in artillery pieces by 15-1, which is probably the case. But why are they saying this? Why are they telegraphing this when throughout this whole thing, it's been about, the Sun Tzu art of war strategy of making yourself look big when you are in fact small, saying that you're winning all these battles when you are in fact getting decimated left and right. So this makes me wonder if maybe they're not out of ammo and they're trying to pretend that they are, just to, make the Russians second, or maybe be overconfident and make some wrong moves. I think the military strategist leaders in the Russian military and the Ukrainian military and the U.S. military, they know things that we don't. Okay, and all of these statements that are made to the public are purely for the purpose. It doesn't matter whose army it is, guys. Whether it's the U.S., Ukraine, whatever it is, it's merely for PR, it's for propaganda. It's not reflective of what's actually going on at all, because you would never broadcast this sort of thing, because of course that would put lives at risk. Now, he has said, however, that we will prevail. Vows the Ukrainian leader Zelensky said, we are definitely going to prevail in this war that Russia has started. Whatever that means now, it is on the battlefields in Ukraine that the future of this world will be decided. So that's a pretty bold statement. Now, it should be noted that in Germany and in most wars, okay, they're always going to say that they were winning until the last minute. Like in Berlin, I was listening to a historian talk about this a few weeks ago. He was talking about how when the Americans and the Russians were encroaching on Berlin, that up until the last minute, okay, they thought they could actually win. Like even when, pretty much they had definitely lost. They thought that they could still win, and they convinced themselves that they would win, and they were telling their soldiers, Germany was telling its soldiers, yeah, we can win. We're going to win this thing right up to the last minute. So this is something that, if you're a supporter of Ukraine, then you need to, and if you're a Ukrainian person, you need to understand this, is that any military is never going to tell you the truth about what is going on in the grand scheme of things, okay? It's just a fact. I mean, you can't believe it because, on the one hand, they have to tell you that, right? Otherwise, people would quit. Which is not to say that they're not going to put up a hell of a fight, because there's, I think the Wagner group got struck. They lost some big numbers. Ukraine struck a Wagner group base, which I think they took out supposedly about 150 to 200 guys, although I think the actual number was around 30 guys. But if you know much about I think it's Wagner group, that's how you say it. They've been probably one of Russia's best soldiers in this whole fight, as far as I know, next to the Chechens. So, it was a pretty substantial loss. The Ukrainians are having wins, but on the whole, they're getting destroyed, and the numbers of soldiers that are coming in, the casualty levels are pretty terrifying. Okay, if true, we're talking about hundreds per day. And like I say, I can't validate those numbers, but that is kind of what I'm hearing. That's the beat on the street, okay? So it's important to remember that your governments, no matter what government it is, guys, this is not like me singling out any specific government. This is just the nature of the beast. They're never going to tell us what's going on. Now, talking about Germany, Ukraine is supposed to get a shipment of German armaments, I think 7 P7H 2000 howitzers on a very special date. Now, this is from a Russian media source, so take it all with a grain of salt, right? And I tell you this, as a full disclaimer, so you can use your own mind to determine what is going on in the world, not some other, spin doctor journalist who is giving you their interpretation of the facts. The fact is, on June 22nd, in 1941, that was the year that Germany invaded the Soviet Union. So some people are drawing odd parallels between that and this. It's important for people to remember, especially the people who are like really extremely pro-Russian. There was this thing called the Holodomor back in the early 1930s. And in the 1930s, we've done videos on this before because it was one of the worst famines probably in history. There's the Chinese famine, the Irish potato famine, and then there was this famine, which are in recent history extremely bad famines, which all had cannibalistic outcomes and the most gruesome stories, like people eating their children, like seriously bad stuff, okay? And that had a lot to do with the Soviet Union, and it was a war of attrition, essentially. And, there was probably a lot of pissed off people as a result of that, and that spurred this nationalism, which perhaps clinged to the stuff that emerged in Germany. But just something to think about, that there's always history, there's always a backstory. It's never this guy attacked this guy, therefore this guy bad. Well, what happened before that? What happened before that? What happened before that? So don't oversimplify and dumb things down. China has demanded full information about U.S. biolabs in Ukraine. For me, this is like the pot calling the kettle black, right? The Chinese government has demanded that the United States disclose full and detailed information about the activity of the U.S. military laboratories in Ukraine. Chinese Foreign Minister spokesperson Zhao Lihan told a news briefing. Like, seriously? I mean, we're still waiting on that. What was that lab called in Wuhan? Something like that. Didn't something, weren't they researching some stuff there? We're still waiting on that info, China. So point the finger. There's 3 pointing back at you, right? Russia issues unusually bitter condemnation of an Israel attack on Damascus airport. The relationship between Russia, Israel, and Ukraine is unique. I haven't fully understood it yet. I've made some theories on the channel before, but every time I do that, I get these weird comments coming out of the woodwork. Almost like that it's, almost like there's somebody watching me. Sometimes I feel like somebody's watching me. How's the rest of the song go? I can't remember. And one of you guys can finish the lyric. Probably not too far from the truth, though. Okay, so Russia's foreign ministry on Friday slammed the vicious practice of Israeli strikes on civilian infrastructure, which it said were provocative and in violation of the basic norms of international law. So the Israelis struck this airport in Syria. I don't know a whole bunch about it. If some of you guys know that Turkey is planning on doing some sort of offensive in northern Syria, and there's just a whole bunch of people, involved in the Syrian situation. I'm not even going to begin to try to flesh that out for people. But while Russia has, in the past years of war, provided Damascus with S-300 missile systems, it has typically not engaged Israel, but has in the last month stepped up warnings against Israel overreaching in its purported anti-Iranian operations in Syria. We know that the Iranians and the Russians are pretty tight. We also know that the Iranians and Venezuelans are signing a major deal, which is going to see a 20-year cooperation deal in agriculture, technology, oil, communications, and transportation. And this is very significant because it starts to look like there's some kind of energy war brewing. You have these major energy exporters. Venezuela, the most oil deposits in the world, bar none. Okay, far higher than Saudi Arabia or anybody else. Iran, among one of the biggest producers of oil, also controlling the Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's oil goes through. Then you have Russia. Okay, you have all these countries which are major producers of energy who are now starting to split from NATO. You also have that pact between Russia and Nicaragua. So we're starting to see then NATO being edged out of energy. So this perhaps is why, this is just a off-the-cuff theory, perhaps this is why they're pushing for the green energy stuff, even though all it's going to amount to is more nuclear power plants. That's all it's going to amount to. Don't kid yourself. It's all about nuclear power plants, maybe nuclear fusion 50 years down the road, if we can even get past this next 10 years, to be brutally honest. But it's, and this is why EVs and all this stuff, it's because, guys, the rest of the world who controls all the oil and natural gas is starting to say F the West. And that's going to be problematic in the future, which is why, 1 in 6 Germans is going to struggle this winter. They're saying 1 in 6 Germans is skipping a meal. 1 in 6 Germans is not going to be able to afford to keep the heat on this year. So not looking good. History is repeating. It's rhyming, but it's also really repeating. Apparently, there was a crash of 3 U.S. military aircrafts in short order in Southern California within 1 week. Within 1 week. Now, they're saying that the Air Force has a similar issue with respect to aging military equipment. You know that charge they usually throw at the Russians? Only 71.5% of the service's fleet is mission ready. America's aging military appears to have reliability issues, even though it outspends the entire world. It's important to remember that a lot of this military budget stuff is maintaining all these bases, maintaining all these aircraft carriers, paying all these pensions of all of these vets, from years gone by to fight all these wars. Like, that's a huge portion of the American military budget. So the actual amount of money that goes into research and development, I mean, we should have laser guns. We should have, Halo rail guns. We should have that kind of stuff by now if they were really spending on that money on, R&D and weapons. But they're not. They're spending it on all the inflated, what do you call that? Just auxiliary type expenses that come along with having this massive military that's spread around the world. So yeah, it's no surprise that the machines are starting to fail. And to wrap it up, apparently there's a caravan of migrants heading towards the U.S. border just in time for the U.S. election, the purge, civil unrest. It's going to be interesting to see, is the gun thing going to pass in the United States? I don't know. I really don't know. You just never know, because some senator might say, what is it? The Republicans, I think, do they still have the Senate, or is it a tie? I can't remember. Either way, I think that as people get pinched more and more, and as the price of everything continues to skyrocket, people are going to start to lose their minds, and they're going to want to take that rage out on somebody else. And, in true fashion, a lot of the working class folk, we tend to take it out on each other, but occasionally, we will unite around a common issue. And this is what they don't want. They don't want people we're all getting screwed with this inflationary tax. You know, they gave us some money for the stimulus in 2020, and you know, they gave themselves a lot more. They went and bought hard assets, and of course now you're going to end up paying 3 to 10 times what you were given in terms of this inflation that's going to happen over the next 10 to God knows how many years. If the system doesn't just collapse, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. If you want any of these military gas canisters, link will be in the description. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care. Stay safe. Canadian Prepper out.